Hello, my name is Eunice, and this is my DI performance for forensics. Hope you guys enjoy. I love my mother. I love my family. And I love Africa. But for over 3,000 years, the family truly believes that a daughter who is uncircumcised is not clean. Because what exists between our legs is unclean, so it must be removed and sealed up as a sign of virginity and virtue. So on her wedding night, her husband can take either a blade or a knife and cut it open. He will then force himself onto his bride. An estimated 100 to 140 million females each day suffer the consequences of FGM, female genital mutilation, a ritual created to remove the external portions of the female genitalia. This is enacted upon girls from infancy to age 15. Wari's theory opens a door into the day that changed her life in Desert Flower. A girl, you see, who is uncircumcised cannot marry. And consequently, she is expelled from her village and put on the same level as a whore. This practice continues even though it is not written in the Quran. It is accepted that due to the mutilation, women are sick mentally and physically for the rest of their lives. The very women who are the backbone of Africa. I survived. But my two sisters did not. Sophia bled to death after being mutilated. And Amina died during childbirth with the baby still in her belly. There is this old proverb in my country that says the last camel in line walks as quickly as the very first. What happens to the least of us has an effect on all of us. As a little girl, I said, I do not want to be a woman. Why, when it's so unhappy and painful? But now that I am who I am proud to be where I am. But for the sake of all of us, let us try and change what it means to be a woman. I was only 5 years old. I remember because the night before I had been given extra portions of rice. The next morning I was shaken awake and motioned to walk with my mother. We walked for miles, leaving the village behind us. And thinking back now, I understand why they do this. And so the village doesn't hear the screams of the little girls in the morning. Mama motioned for us to stop. And soon after I heard this rhythmic clicking, so beautiful to my ears. It reminded me of the gypsy woman. A tale told to the little girls of the day that our lives would be made clean, pure, and holy. And happy. Before I knew it, the gypsy woman was in front of me. She motioned for me to sit on a flat rock. There was no hello, no how are you. No, what's going to happen today will be the most painful event of your life. No, she was strictly business, and I soon started calling her the killer woman. I tried looking her into her eyes, and what looked back at me was darkness, emptiness, pain. She took out from her cotton sack a jagged edged razor blade, and though the sun was still up to this day, I am haunted by that dried blood. She quickly spat on it and rubbed it against her dress. The next thing I knew, my eyes were being shut closed. My hands were being drawn back. Next thing I felt was that jagged edge blade tearing, ripping me apart. It's funny. Sometimes when I tell the story, I feel like I'm telling someone else's story. Oftentimes reporters ask me, "So, how did it feel?" How did it feel? It's like getting your arm torn off or your leg sawed off. Only this is the most sensitive part of your body. How does that feel? When I woke up, I thought Gypsy Woman was done. But in her hand, she had a thorn and thread. With the thorn, she used as a needle and punctured my skin, providing holes with which she sewed me back together, one by one. At this moment, I felt my body floating up into the air, looking down at this horrendous scene. When I awoke again, the Gypsy Woman was gone, and so was Mama. My feet were tied together. My hands were tied together. This was to prevent from infection. I rolled back and looked at the scene. And there it was. Pieces of my flesh, my meat laying there, drying in the sun like an animal. Mama came back for me and took me back to the hut. That night my father came and sat next to me and asked me, "So, daughter, how do you feel?" I assumed he was talking about my new state of womanhood. But all I could think of was the pain and the anger. In my culture, a woman earns a badge of respect when she gives birth. She has participated in the gift of life, has brought another human being into this world. I too was a mama when my son was born, starting prematurely with my circumcision age 5, coming full circle to his birth. I had grown a deep, profound respect for my mother and the women of Somalia who did what they did each day because they were born female. Female. I thought back to myself, living in the West, scrubbing floors at McDonald's when my cramps hurt so much I thought I'd pass out. Or having surgery to remove the crude scars just so I could urinate properly because the Gypsy Woman only left the size of a matchstick for me to urinate. And in all reality, I am the lucky one. When I think back to the little girl in the bush walking her goats for miles and miles just to feed them. When her cramps are so painful she might die. Or the new wife who will be sewn like a piece of cloth just so her husband can be satisfied. Or the pregnant mother, like my own mother, who is ready to give birth and is still sewn up so tight. Unfortunately, I know the answer too well. Most of them bleed out there, die alone, and are lucky if their husbands come before hyenas or vultures do. I am grown now. But to this day, I can't stop thinking about the little girl who has no voice, who has no one to speak up for her, to tell her, no, this is not the only way. No, you have a choice. Pain is not the answer. And I feel that I, as that little girl, as a woman of Somalia, have this duty to speak. Thank you very much for listening.